So here you go, folks. This is exactly where Rack Stacker all began. The Rack Stacker deer feed product was designed specifically for winter feeding situations, exactly like we are in the middle of January right now, and a lot of people need to understand the benefits of feeding Rack Stacker over other products out there. Let me explain something. So this first product here is Rack Stacker Original Deer Feed. The difference with this and any other rations you may find is this formulation has not changed in over 11 years. We're going to maintain that same formulation. It's a higher protein, higher digestible ingredients, and does not cause what's called ruminitis. A lot of people don't understand what ruminitis is, and I'm about to explain that to you. So what I've got here is a small bag of agricultural corn. Now you can find this just about any stores, co-op feed mills and stuff like that, or even local farmers that have dried it down. Now what you need to understand is this stuff here is dried down to a 14% moisture content, which makes it harder for white-tailed deer to digest it. It's a lot different than when you'll find it out in the field. When it's out in the field, it could be as high as 35–40% moisture. As they're digesting that corn cob that's in the field, they're able to digest it properly and consume other forages that are in the area. When you pour this, when you go to your store and buy this feed, like the whole corn, and pour it out specifically for the deer, if they ingest too much of it, it's caused ruminitis in their guts, which is just rotting and fermentation, not properly digested because of the lack of moisture that they're ingesting through the wintertime. So it's better to have a higher fiber in your forage, so when the deer are digesting the corn, that it's passing through the system quicker, not causing any problems. So it's okay to have corn, but the carbohydrate sources in here has to be passed through quickly so it doesn't cause any further issues. Now we're feeding a lot of areas that have a lot of deer in your specific spot. If you're trying to find a more economical way of feeding your white-tailed deer, we have a product called Corn Cob, which is more geared towards winter feeding that are wintering areas, or if you've got a migratory path that you know that there's a lot of deer at that you want to help throughout the winter. This is the way to go. The Rack Stacker Original Deer Feed is a higher protein, higher quality feed. It's where I like to feed, but I'm only feeding 15 to 20 mouths, so it's not as expensive for anybody to use that. Now we also have a bulk program for our customers where they can buy up to a ton and have it delivered to their farm. So if you're interested in buying volume, there's a much better and safer way to do it that way as well. Now let's touch base on a little bit of hay. Some folks don't realize that if you take hay into a big bush location in, say, northern Ontario where there's not normally hay, there's a microorganism in the clover and alfalfa that can bind up in the fawn's stomach if they don't already have that during their growing stages. So what I recommend doing is staying away from hay if you're into that big spot. Now, because of myself, I'm in a fringe area, what I refer to as a fringe. The north side of my farm is a lot of bush. On the south end of my farm, there's an awful lot of ag fields. And because we're standing in a sweet success field that's constantly full of clover and alfalfa through the summertime, I've decided to bale it up. It allows me to have a food source for the winter. We square bale it, make it easier to pour it into the wintering area, and that way they can digest it. But because if you take that hay, or cattle hay, or whichever you decide, second cut alfalfa, into the bush, it's not as easily digested, and it's not recommended to do so. You're better off taking oats or a mixed grain like Rack Stacker Deer Feed or Corn Cob.